Welcome everyone to a very special episode of the Theatre Thoughts podcast. I've come out of the studio today to talk to two amazing creatives who are involved with a brand new musical coming to Sydney. So first of all, we have a very in-demand creative with over 2 decades of experience in the industry who studied at WAPA and VCA and has worked on over 20 national tours. Most recently was the resident director of Hamilton for Australia and New Zealand, has directed and acclaimed productions of Pierre and Memphis the Musical, and is the co-artistic director of the Stephen Sondheim Repertory Company. Watch this. It's Dean Drieberg. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
And then, of course, we have, hailing from the Gold Coast, Queensland, a performer who obtained a Diploma of Musical Theatre from NIDA in 2018, part of Squabbalogic's Australian-made concert at Seymour Centre in 2021 before going on tour with West Side Story for Opera Australia in the role of Rosalie. It's Grace Driscoll. Thank you so much for joining. Oh, sorry, my voice just popped in. That was awkward. How are you both?
Good. I mean, we've just finished a very long day of rehearsing
Yes,
a lot
thank you
of
so much for
things.
coming on.
Oh, no, so good. So, I think we're tired.
We're tired but excited and happy to be here.
Yeah, it's great. And so it's obviously the production we're talking about is Natasha, Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812.
Ooh, all in one breath. Well
I
done.
know. Woo, my. So I guess the first thing I want to ask is about the production itself, because this is relatively new in terms of like the musical theatre world. I guess the one that people would know it from is from Broadway with Josh Groban, who was in it. And so could you kind of just, like, I guess, give me a short snapshot of the show for context?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I can talk about what the show is and maybe you can talk about what the story is.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So it kind of originated, it's a section of War and Peace. I think it's like 72 out of, I don't know, 1,200 and something pages. So it's a section of War and Peace that has been turned into a musical, but in a really clever way where it's using folk and electropop and techno and contemporary music styles to tell the story.
Yeah.
And it was originally played in a like 85-seat theatre, black box theatre downtown.
Yeah.
And then moved into a custom-built tent and then eventually ended up on Broadway.
Right. Okay.
And this is the Australian premiere of the work.
Which is very exciting.
Yeah, it's had a lot of different lives before coming here, but the story centers on the 70-page portion of the novel. It features Pierre, who's kind of one of the main characters of the pieces. He's like going through an existential crisis and just like questioning life, I suppose. And it also follows Natasha, who becomes embroiled in an affair.
Ooh, saucy.
Scandalous. Very scandalous for 1812, with a character named Anatol Karagan. So, there's a host of really crazy, cool characters. The music really ties into the piece. It's fully sung through as well, which is really fascinating and exciting. You just come see it. It's something different. It's definitely
it's not like any other music.
Non-traditional, non-commercial theatre, and that's kind of how it was born as well.
I think the one that sticks in my head is the one video I saw, the sneaky bootleg version of the opening number on Broadway, where it's the prologue and introduces every single character.
Yeah.
And for some reason, it just like I love that song so much. When I was like, I added it to my Broadway soundtrack, when I'm driving, and I tried to get it right in my head. I was like, Anatol, Natasha, and and so it's a nice little intro to the show, because I guess it can be a little bit like confusing in terms of how many characters in the plot and so on. Yeah, and so it's a clever tool.
Some of the show is, I mean, the way that we're building it is definitely in a much more ensemble way. Like definitely, Pierre and Natasha are very central characters, but every person gets a moment, every person gets a song.
Yeah,
and so it's just that opening prologue moment is a good way to introduce all these people that you're going to meet. And some of them you only meet them once, so you'll remember them very easily.
And that piece in particular was like written, the author Dave Malloy, who wrote the show, was written because they were like, how do we quickly and succinctly get into this world that we want our audience to be in, and also tell them that they're in for like a long night. With a bit of satire as well, like it's a complicated Russian novel.
Very
It's
complicated.
very much. It's basically the song is the 12 Days of Christmas. But done with the characters.
Oh my God, I never thought of it like that.
Yeah,
Of course it is. Yeah.
It's the same kind of framework. And so by the time you get to the end of the song and you've repeated the names enough, you know who they are and then one word to describe them.
Yeah.
Except for Pierre, who gets a whole 3-minute song because he's very complex.
Complex character. So Dean, you're directing this version, and I want to jump on something you just said about the ensemble kind of element to it. One thing I wanted to ask was, did your time working on Hamilton, is that kind of where you're drawing a lot of inspiration from? Because that's a very ensemble driven show as well.
Yeah, I'd say more so than Hamilton, because Hamilton still has principals and then there are the ensemble. This is a lot more blended, and we don't have an ensemble of dancers that aren't featured. Like every single person on the stage has a moment. They're all named characters, and people are a lot more active in scenes, even if there's only a couple of people singing or what seems to be only a couple of people focused in a scene. The ensemble is still working to kind of create that scene. And sometimes, the lines are blurred as to are they still that character or are they now, townsfolk number 3.
Right.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And in our production as well, all the actors are playing the music as well. So
that's
probably
how do we
musicians.
only get to this so far into the podcast?
No,
It is my favorite
It's
trend
that.
that's come out of musical theatre in recent years is the actor musician. I think it is perfect.
And I think we did it originally as, this is a great way to approach this work, but then once it's a really hard score.
Yeah, that's real difficult.
But the creative team have chosen some incredible artists from all over the country actually to fulfill these roles, and they're smashing it.
Not everyone is a music theatre person either.
Yeah.
A lot of people have done other things that give them the skills to do music theatre, but they haven't necessarily done a musical before.
Okay.
And that makes it so much more interesting as well. And I think with the styles of music, it works really well.
Yeah, definitely.
Totally.
And so do you want to talk a little bit about your character?
Yeah. So Natasha, she's pretty similar to in the novel. So she's described as being young. That's her first main descriptor. And throughout the piece, I would say she kind of goes in this journey from girlhood to womanhood, I would say.
Right, okay.
And she just obviously with the affair that she becomes entangled in, that kind of speeds that up, and she just kind of learns, for me, she learns the meaning of unconditional love through, I suppose, the characters that she ignores for most of the show. And then at the end she kind of learns and realizes that, for me. So yeah, she's very, very fun to play because she has so many different facets to her, and that journey in particular is it's just got so many different layers, and there's so many different relationships with each of the characters that bring out a different side in her.
And I think you also bring more out of the character than what's on the page as well, because she can be very two-dimensional.
Okay.
But I think Grace has such a facility to show emotion and show a real journey that, for me, I haven't seen the original production. I've only ever heard the soundtrack, but already just what's on the page, I'm feeling like Grace has so much more range and makes her way more relatable and three-dimensional and it's just interesting because she definitely does start as young naive girl, which is such a trope that you can play into, but that's part of the journey, and then the as it progresses, and then Act 2, all these other layers come out, so it is really fascinating.
That's so cool. I actually bumped into Carla Gare in Melbourne when I was down there. I went to see the Emerging Musical Writers little program they had, which was incredible. But we had a little quick chat about it, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so excited to see it. So you have an amazing cast as well, like you said, from all over the spectrum.
I mean, we had a week of music rehearsals, which was necessary, and everyone got to see each other's moments. And because I was in the room for some of it, and you see Carla responding to seeing Grace singing No One Else for the first time, or Grace responding to seeing Carla sing Sonia Alone, or hearing Zoe Frangos sing Dust and Ashes. And
oh, wow.
It was such an amazing moment that everyone could be like, oh wow, like I
Yeah.
loved you
The
before, but
talent.
wow.
It was like from day dot, like everyone opened their page and they were already playing the score, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh my god, I was shocked. I played the tambourine.
Oh, do you?
That's my
That would be
contribution.
I'd be the
And-
triangle or something.
The tambourine.
And you play a bit of
a bit of glockenspiel.
Oh, there
as
you
well.
go. That's
But
okay.
I'm just consistently floored with who these creatives were able
Yeah.
to find, and
Yeah.
everyone is just so perfect, and it's.
I
gonna
feel
be
like
amazing.
shows like this, I often say like I'd love to be a fly on the wall in like a professional
Yeah.
rehearsal, and I just love to just sit there and just be like, just kind of watching and taking everything in, because like actor musician sort of performances and the way you've spoken about it as well just seems fascinating to me. It's something that I would just like can never comprehend in my mind.
Yeah.
And I love it. I love seeing it on
Yeah.
stage. One thing I did want to ask, which I guess is kind of like a question I'm kind of developing, is why this one and why now?
That's how I start every creative process.
Yeah.
It's literally those two questions.
That's awesome.
I had come across the piece. I remember reading about it and seeing images when it was Off-Broadway. And this is probably once it was in the tent, and reading about this, immersive production and how it used different music styles, and it was about a historic piece. And I thought, oh, that sounds really interesting. And then I was in New York and it had closed, so I missed it, and friends had seen it and they're like, it's incredible. And then it went to Broadway, but again, I missed it. Like every time I was there, it had just one version had closed, so I never got to see it.
Yeah.
And then that Broadway version was very short-lived, so my first experience with it was listening to the soundtrack, and I just remember hearing it, thinking, oh, I'll never see this show, so I'll listen to it and see what it's about. And I was really drawn in by the music, firstly, and how innovative it was to use a score. Like so much so, there was a point when I was listening to it, and I thought I'd like, how your Apple Music is playing something and then it
Yeah.
finishes and it skips to something else.
Yes.
I thought that had happened because all of a sudden was this like different style of music
Yeah.
that I'm like, this
I know
can't
exactly
possibly
what
be.
you're talking about, because I thought that from the prologue to Pierre's first song. I was like, this doesn't connect, surely.
Yeah.
No, sorry, continue.
It was just
yeah.
such a stylistic leap, and I was like, oh no, this is all in the one show. And that kind of, I was really interested in how you could do that in a show and still make it cohesive. And it completely is when you go on the journey of it. And the choice of music is very specific.
Yeah.
There's a reason why the music becomes electronic all of a sudden.
Yeah.
You got to come and see the show to find out why.
Yeah. As well as
I'm
you.
not going to give it away. But that made me interested in it. And I was pitching, I wanted to direct something for Darlinghurst Theatre Company, and that was on the list. And I didn't think they'd go for it because they had done once. And I'm like, they wouldn't do another actor muso show, but I'd pitched it as an actor muso show. And then, the Darlinghurst were like, Natasha, Pierre and the Great Comet, do you want to do it? And I was
Yes.
like,
Which is amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we have to shout out to Darlinghurst Theatre Company for
programming. Yeah.
Yeah.
something like that needed a second life after its Broadway.
Yeah, and
kind
especially
of
something new, because we're
finish.
dying for new things. I know I am
Yeah.
personally, I'm just dying for new
Yeah.
things to come.
Yeah.
And it almost was one of those things that kind of passed over.
Yes.
I was obsessed with this show when I was studying musical
Oh.
theatre. Yeah, I think what drew me originally was the young woman of color lead. Back when it had Philippa Sue in it, and I remember like the day that the Broadway cast was released with Danae Benton, me and my friends were driving to like theatre practice, and we like put it on straight away.
Okay.
Like that's how obsessed we were
That's
with it.
amazing.
And like, yeah, it's just so exciting that it's having a second life here in Australia. And shout out to Darlinghurst because they rock
Yeah.
and they're amazing. And let's keep that up.
Yeah. More programming of works like this. And
Yeah.
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 Love
Well,
that.
did you want to talk, Grace, quickly about, I guess, like your background coming up to this? Because you've had I was like doing my research like before I come, and I was just like, oh, you've had fascinating like couple of years, like leading up to this point.
Yeah, I mean, this is certainly like kind of the next step, I would say, career-wise, which is really exciting. I started on the Gold Coast and then I studied over at NIDA in 2018. And from there, I just kind of hustled and heard a lot of no's, as a lot of people do when they finish uni.
Yeah.
And then I got my first job, which was The Secret Garden.
Yes.
Which was, of course, cancelled because of COVID.
Yeah, I think actually I was at the media day for that.
Oh, Oh,
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, I cried the other day.
Yeah, no, don't blame
But it was actually a really interesting year, 2020, because I got to meet Dean.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got a backstory.
Yeah,
Oh,
we've got
okay.
a backstory.
Love that.
Over Zoom, actually. It was a while until
Yeah.
we met each other. But I got to meet people like Dean and so many other amazing creatives and artists that year. So it actually was quite a pivotal year, 2020. And since then, I kind of just toured with a few shows, West Side Story, Go from North Country, and then came back to Sydney, and then this popped up, which is, incredibly exciting. It's basically a dream role, a dream show.
Yeah,
So
congratulations.
yeah, thank you again to Darlinghurst and to everyone. It really takes a village, as we know with these things. It takes a vision, and it takes money.
Yeah.
And it takes so many different creatives